Okay, happy 21st of July. Happy last day of school, year 8. And again, I think I might have said it yesterday, I'm really sad not to be with you in person, but we're going to end on the end of a favourite story of mine, Lamb to the Slaughter. So guys, just while whoever's in the room with you, lovely sir or miss, lovely teacher person with authority and commanding respect, we're going to get down the title, Lamb to the Slaughter, 21st of July. We'll stay, get the register done. Okay, so into our books, Lamb to the Slaughter, 21st of July. Now, guys, we're going to be reading the end of the story, looking at a few choice questions, but really we have the opportunity, if we can get there, to watch the other Tales of the Unexpected version of this story. So we'd like to make this a lesson of 2 halves, stay really focused, get the questions done, so that we're able to get to that second half of the lesson where we watch the Tales of the Unexpected Lamb to the Slaughter. Okay, so guys, a quick set of questions, just true or false is all I want you to write down, just to remind us what we read yesterday. Okay, so true or false? Mary is a dutiful, obedient housewife who loves her husband. Is that true or false? True or false? We know why her husband is leaving her. Is that true or false? 3. Mary kills her husband with a metal bat. Is that true or false? Number 4. Mary doesn't care if she dies. Is that true or false? And 5. Mary needs to get away with murder for her unborn child. Is that true or false? So guys, I'll just ask the teacher just to press pause to give you a chance to reflect on these and to get down your answers true and false before we look together at what those answers might be. Okay, so if the teacher would just like to pause now, write down your true and falses and we'll look together in a minute. Okay, so hopefully you're back with me. You've made your choices, so let's have a little look. So, true or false? So give yourself a mark out of 5. Number 1 is true. Mary begins the story as the dutiful, obedient housewife. A very stereotypical woman, isn't she? A housewife of the 1940s, 50s, waiting at home. She doesn't work. She's sewing, waiting for her husband to come home who loves her. Now, good, this one was false. We never know why her husband's leaving her. He tells her something, he explains something, but we never get the content of that conversation. So it's false that we know why he's leaving her. We just know that he is. Now, Mary kills her husband with a metal bat. Is that true or false? It's false. It talks about the fact that it could be like a metal bat. It's something big and heavy, but it's not a metal bat. It's a leg of lamb. So we get this lovely, irreverent, macabre reference in the title, Lamb to the Slaughter, to reference the murder weapon, that it's a piece of lamb. 4. Mary doesn't care if she dies. Now, this one is tricky because actually it does say in the story yesterday that she would be relieved if she got the death penalty, that she doesn't care if she dies. But this links to number 5. Mary decides she needs to get away with murder for her unborn child. So that becomes true. So it goes true, false, false, true, true. So give yourself a mark out of 5. Brilliant. Now, guys, I don't know if you kept the stories from yesterday or whether they need to be given out, but we are picking up in the story, okay, where we looked yesterday at the idea that she needed the alibi. She's going to get away with murder. How's she going to get away with it? And we're coming into the story halfway through, so I give you a minute to find yourselves at the sentence that begins, and now she told herself as she hurried back. So guys, if you need to pause just whilst you locate yourself in the story, I'll allow whoever's in the room to just pause and allow you to do that. Okay, so as we read this section, we're thinking about this decision. So Mary, for the sake of her unborn child, needs to get away with murder. We know from yesterday that she went off to the grocery store to get herself an alibi. An alibi is somebody that will vouch for her whereabouts at the time of the murder. Now, guys, moving forward, when we look at other ways that she gets away with the murder, remind yourselves, or whether she gets away with murder, remind yourself, that this is like the 1940s, 50s. So we're not talking CSI crime investigations. They wouldn't have had all of the technology that we have today to process a crime scene, to find everything. So some of their methods are a little rudimentary, a little old-fashioned. Here we go. And now she told herself as she hurried back, All she was doing now, she was returning home to returning home to her husband, and he was waiting for his supper. And she must cook it good and make it as tasty as possible, because the poor man was tired. And if, when she entered the house, she happened to find anything unusual or tragic or terrible, then naturally, it would be a shock, and she'd become frantic with grief and horror. Mind you, she wasn't expecting to find anything. She was just going home with the vegetables. Mrs. Patrick Maloney going home with the vegetables on Thursday evening to cook supper for her husband. That's the way, she told herself. Do everything right and natural. Keep things absolutely natural, and there'll be no need for any acting at all. Therefore, when she entered the kitchen by the back door, she was humming a little tune to herself and smiling. Patrick, she called. How are you, darling? So, guys, this is something else about how she's planning to get away with murder. So we know she's going to have an alibi. She's going to try and get away with murder for the sake of the unborn child. And she uses this phrase, do everything right and natural. Now, if we look back over this section, we can see that one of those words is used more than once. Is it the word right or is it the word natural? So just scan this section again. So in 3, 2, 1, she's going to do everything right and natural. Which is the word that's repeated? Good. We've got this word natural coming up. It says keep things absolutely natural. Then naturally it would be a shock. So it's this idea that she's going to have to pretend to be natural. She's going to have to pretend that everything's okay. So how is she planning to get away with murder? The alibi in acting naturally. That everything is natural, that everything is as it should be. She put the parcel down on the table and went through into the living room. And when she saw him lying there on the floor with his legs doubled up and one arm twisted back underneath his body, it really was rather a shock. All the old love and longing for him welled up inside her, and she ran over to him, knelt down beside him and began to cry her heart out. It was easy. No acting was necessary. A few minutes later, she got up and went to the phone. She knew the number of the police station, and when the man came at the other end, she answered. She cried to him, quick, come quick, Patrick's dead. So guys, we've got this word here, a crime of passion. Now, some crimes get this actual official label. Now, crimes that are motivated by love and affection are labelled crimes of passion. So in other words, when your level of love and affection takes you to doing something bad or committing a criminal act to try and keep or possess the person that you love or to stop them from leaving you, becomes a crime of passion. And we're reminded here that Mary's crime is a crime of passion, that she loved Patrick and that she did this out of that place of not wanting him to leave. Okay, we also see something interesting cropping up into the story now, adverbials of time. So we're going to see lots of words like a few minutes later or measures of time. Could you just have a quick moment where you turn and talk to each other? Why is time important in a crime? What is it about measuring time and working things out in time that's important in a crime? Could you just quickly have a conversation with the person next to you just for 30 seconds? And then we'll come back and think about it together. Okay, guys, so what did you come up with? Why is time important in a crime? Yes, absolutely. Adverbials of time. Time is crucial. There's lots of evidence within the criminal investigation process, any solving of a crime, that the longer the time is between the act of the murder or the crime and when you actually find somebody, it's harder to prove it was them. So everything in a crime scene is all what we might call time dependent. We need to make these decisions quickly. You've got not a lot of time before the crime scene might get contaminated or that the weapon or the murderer might get further away. So it's a really time sensitive moment. As soon as a crime's reported, everything has to be done quite quickly. So we'll see this as we go forward. Who's speaking? Mrs. Maloney, Mrs. Patrick Maloney. You mean Patrick Maloney's dead? I think so, she sobbed. He's lying on the floor and I think he's dead. Be right over, the man said. The car came very quickly, and when she opened the front door, 2 policemen walked in. She knew them both. She knew nearly all the men at that precinct, and she fell right into a chair, then went over to join the other one, who was called O'Malley, kneeling by the body. Is she dead? Is he dead? She cried. I'm afraid he is. What happened? So lovely. So we've got this word quick on the other page and on this word quickly. So it's this idea that when there's been a murder, you have to move quickly. This is about getting evidence whilst it's fresh and uncontaminated. So here they come, our good policemen doing everything quickly, doing everything by the book. Briefly, she told her story about going out to the grocer and coming back to find him on the floor. While she was talking, crying and talking, Noonan discovered a small patch of congealed blood on the dead man's head. He showed it to O'Malley, who got up at once and hurried to the phone. Soon, other men began to come to the house. First a doctor, then 2 detectives, one of whom she knew by name. Later, a police photographer arrived and took pictures, and a man who knew about fingerprints. There was a great deal of whispering and muttering beside the corpse, and the detectives kept asking her a lot of questions. But they always treated her kindly. She told her story again, this time right from the beginning, when Patrick had come in and she was sewing and he was tired, so tired he hadn't wanted to go out for supper. She told how she'd put the meat in the oven, it's there now cooking, and how she stepped out to the grocer for vegetables and came back to find him lying on the floor. So suddenly our crime scene gets really busy. Okay, we've got Mary at the centre of it, but lots of other people join the scene. So really quickly, guys, I've given you a clue on the screen. Let's just make a list of the people who are part of the police investigation. Some of them mentioned by name, some of them by the job they do. So I've given you a little clue. We've got 6 people that we need to list. Off you go. Press pause now and just make that list of who's part of the investigation. Okay, right, so let's see. So there should be 6 people. We've got Noonan, we've got O'Malley, we've got a doctor, brilliant. We've got 2 detectives, a police photographer, and a man who knows about fingerprints. Now, guys, I just want to draw attention that we've got at least 6 people here. 6 part of the police, 6 parts, 6 people who play a part in the police investigation. 6 experts. What do you notice all about them? A man, 2 detectives, O'Malley's a man, Noonan's a man, the doctor. What is part, or what connects all of these? Can you see it? All of the people in the police investigation are men, okay? And they're here being men, doing manly police investigating things. And there's 6 of them. Surely 6 clever, expert, trained men can take on little Mary Maloney, can't they? We'll see. Which grocer? One of the detectives asked. She told him, and he turned and whispered something to the other detective, who immediately went outside into the street. In 15 minutes he was back with a page of notes, and there was more whispering, and through her sobbing she heard a few of the whispered phrases. Acted quite normal, very cheerful, wanted to give him a good supper. Peas, cheesecake, impossible that she. Now, guys, we're just going to pause here and talk about something called dramatic irony. Now, this is often or primarily used in plays, but stories also use it. So dramatic irony is when the audience knows more than the characters, or at least some of the characters. So we respond differently. So we're not responding in the same way as the characters. We're responding differently to them because we know more information. So when the detective returns and whispers that it's impossible that she, what do we already know that they don't? Good. We know that it is possible that Mary did do it. So guys, how are we meant to feel about the detectives? Remember, how many of them are there? 6 experts on this crime scene. How are we meant to feel about the detectives knowing that they all are already getting it wrong? So guys, can you just copy and complete this statement for me? We'll ask the teacher just to press pause. Remember, the quicker we get the statements done, the quicker we can make sure that we get to watch our video. So we begin to think that the detectives are. Not only this, but we also begin to think that Mary is. So actually, what is our opinion of the detectives and how are we changing how we think about Mary? Remember, I love odds. So we've got 6 versus 1. We've got 6 men versus 1 woman. We've got 6 expertly trained detectives, photographers, fingerprint specialists, and we've got Mary. Docile, tranquil, placid, heavy with child. I love what Dahl's doing here because we begin to think that the detectives are, And not only this, but we also begin to think that Mary is. So what impressions? Now, if you need to, whoever's with you in the room, the teacher might help you just talk as a group and agree on your ideas to complete the sentence, or you can just do it in silence. But give yourself a couple of minutes and then we're moving on. Okay, so what ideas did you come up with? Okay, we're beginning to think that maybe the detectives are not as clever as they think. We begin to think that the detectives are a bit foolish. The detectives are making assumptions. The detectives, we're responding to them differently. They're coming across now, as soon as we see them getting it wrong, as being imperfect. The detectives are a bit stupid, a bit imperfect. But not only this, what are we beginning to think about Mary? Mary's not what she seems, is she? She's clever. She's outwitting. She's tricking the detectives. 1 versus 6. And Mary is winning. After a while, the photographer and the doctor departed, and the other 2 men came in and took the corpse away on a stretcher. Then the fingerprint man went away. The 2 detectives remained, and so did the 2 policemen. So we go from 6 to 4. They were exceptionally nice to her, and Jack Noonan asked if she wouldn't rather go somewhere else, to her sisters perhaps, or to his own wife who would take care of her and put her up for the night. No, she said. She didn't feel she could move even a yard at that moment. Would they mind awfully if she just stayed where she was until she felt better? She didn't feel too good at the moment, she really didn't. Then hadn't she better lie down on the bed? Jack Noonan asked. No, she said. She'd like to stay right where she was in this chair. A little later, perhaps, when she felt better, she would move. So, guys, we've got 6 nice but dim detectives, haven't we? They're all being exceptionally nice to her, but they're missing all the what's right in front of them. They're missing it, aren't they? And their only offer is, let's get rid of the woman. Let some other woman take care of her. So what's that word where you think less of somebody? You don't think they could do something because they're a woman or they're weak. We underestimate people sometimes, don't we? And all of these men, because they think they're superior, because they're men and detectives, are underestimating our murderer, Mahoney. So they left her there while they went about their business, searching the house. Occasionally, one of the detectives asked her another question. Sometimes Jack Noonan spoke at her gently as he passed by. Her husband, he told her, had been killed by a blow on the back of the head, administered with a heavy, blunt instrument, almost certainly a large piece of metal. They were looking for the weapon. The murderer may have taken it with him. But on the other hand, he may have thrown it away or hidden it somewhere on the premises. It's the old story, he said. Get the weapon and you got the man. I love that bit. So guys, what is the continuing kind of like impression of the detectives that are being built up? The detectives seem to be good. So the detectives seem to be, so just add that sentence to your last piece that you wrote. The detectives seem to be assuming that it has to be a man. So the detectives seem to be a little bit, what's that word when we treat women differently? We're discriminating against women. They're a little bit sexist. Yep, that's the word. They're a little bit sexist. They're underestimating that she could have done it. So they're making assumptions. And how do the men treat Mary? So Jack Noonan's speaking to her gently. So they're treating her a bit like she's weak, like she's feeble, like they have to be gentle with her. So the detectives seem to be idiots. Or is that a bit mean? They definitely seem to be making assumptions, don't they? And why is this final idea delicious? Why is the idea that you get the weapon and you've got the man ironic? What is it we know that the detectives don't? Good. So what is the weapon? It's that leg of lamb, isn't it? And the detectives are looking for a heavy, blunt instrument. Now, what do we know? So we know the weapon's a leg of lamb. We know Mary's the murderer. So looking for a man, get the weapon and you've got the man, okay, is the last detail that Mary has to deal with. Oh, where did she put the lamb? Let's see. Later, one of the detectives came up to her and sat down beside her. Did she know anything, he asked, of anything in the house that could have been used as a weapon? Would she mind having a look round to see if there was anything missing? A very big spanner, for example, or a heavy metal vase. They didn't have any heavy metal vases, she said. Or a big spanner? She didn't think they had a big spanner, but there might be some things like that in the garage. The search went on. She knew that there were policemen in the garden all around the house. She could hear their footsteps on the gravel outside, and sometimes she saw a flash of a torch through a chink in the curtains. It began to get late. Nearly 9, she noticed by the clock on the mantel. The 4 men searching the room seemed to be growing weary, a trifle exasperated. "Jack," she said the next time Sergeant Noonan went by. "Jack, would you mind giving me a drink?" "Sure, I'll give you a drink. You mean this whiskey?" "Oh, yes, please, but just a small one. It might make me feel better." He handed her the glass. "Why don't you have one yourself?" she said. "You must be awfully tired. Please do. You've been very good to me." "Well," he answered, "it's not strictly allowed, but I might take just a drop to keep me going." One by one, the others came in and were persuaded to take a little nip of whiskey. They stood around rather awkwardly with drinks in their hands, uncomfortable in her presence, trying to say consoling things to her. Sergeant Noonan wandered into the kitchen and came out quickly and said, "Oh, look, Mrs. Mahoney. You know that oven of yours is still on and the meat's inside." "Oh, dear me," she cried. "Is it? I better turn it off for you, hadn't I? Oh, will you do that, Jack? Thank you so much." When the sergeant returned the second time, she looked at him with large, dark, tearful eyes. "Jack Noonan," she said. "Yes? Would you do me a small favour, you and these others?" "We can try, Mrs. Maloney." So, just a lovely little moment. The meat's inside. Why is it ironic that Sergeant Noonan, who a minute ago is saying if you find the weapon, you got the man, is the guy that finds out or is aware that the oven's on? What's in the oven? The weapon. And what's she doing to the murder weapon? She's cooking it. What's she going to do next with the murder weapon? "Well," she said, "here you all are, and good friends of dear Patrick's too, and helping to catch the man who killed him. You must be terribly hungry by now, because it's long past your supper time, and I know Patrick would never forgive me, God bless his soul, if I allowed you to remain in this house without offering you decent hospitality. Why don't you just eat up the lamb that's in the oven? It'll be cooked just right by now." "Oh, wouldn't dream of it," Sergeant Noonan said. "Please," she begged, "please eat it. Personally, I couldn't touch a thing, certainly not what's been in the house when he was here, but it's all right for you. It'd be a favour to me if you'd eat it up. Then you can go on with your work again afterwards." There was a good deal of hesitating among the 4 policemen, but they were clearly hungry, and in the end they were persuaded to go into the kitchen and help themselves. The woman stayed where she was, listening to them speaking amongst themselves, their voices thick and sloppy, because their mouths were full of meat. So, guys, if getting away with murder is about getting rid of the evidence, what genius idea has Mary Maloney had? I know, she's feeding the evidence to the detectives. I love that. So actually, it's really clever, because whose side are we on? Who do we actually root for, Mary or the detectives? Now, if we're looking at the detectives, I love this. We don't have really time to look at it, but it's delicious. Their voice is thick and sloppy. Now, that's a lovely moment where in that word choice, that's what Dahl really thinks of these detectives. He thinks the detectives in this story are a little bit thick and a little bit sloppy. And there they are, mouths full of meat, eating the blooming evidence. It's brilliant. It's genius. Okay. "Have some more, Charlie." "No, better not finish it." "She wants us to finish it. She said so. Be doing her a favour." "Oh, okay then. Give me some more." "That's the hell of a big club the guy must have used to hit poor Patrick," one of them is saying. "The doc says his skull was smashed all to pieces, just like from a sledgehammer. That's why it ought to be easy to find." Exactly what I say. Whoever done it, they're not going to be carrying a thing around like that with them any longer than they need. One of them belched. So there's this lovely idea that these detectives are thick, sloppy, belchy, greedy, not intelligent, clever detectives. Personally, I think it's right here on the premises, probably right under our very noses. What do you think, Jack? And in the other room, Mary Maloney began to giggle. I love that. So guys, if you've got time, quick summary sentence. If not, skip straight to watching it. But how did our Mary Maloney, tranquil, placid Mary Maloney, get away with murder? How did she get away with murder? She outwitted the detective. She played the odds. She had the alibi. She was clever. And she gets away with it, guys. And she giggles. She realizes it. So enjoy watching it. Have a beautiful summer, and I hope you enjoyed that story.